Hey, Body Buddies, I'm turning on Instagram. All right, we are going to do a little answer to a question that came. Hi, Instagram. I'm going to talk to Facebook. So this question came in yesterday, and it's one I have wanted to respond to with a training, I would say. This is more of a training. And so this is going to definitely impact many people. And I'm not even going to tell you the age of the person who wrote in, because the concept and the questions that were asked, I have heard them from anyone between the ages of 80 years old and as young as 11 years old. So this is not limited to a certain age group. So I think this is going to be something everyone can learn from if you open your mind. So the question was, I've been feeling really insecure lately. I have this weird thing where when people take pictures of me, I feel like those pictures aren't the person I see in the mirror. That upsets me because I want to look like the person I see in the mirror. Kind of silly, I know, but I've had this for a few years and I don't want people to post any photos of me on social media. And I don't ever post photos of myself on social media. I feel like my pictures are so unattractive. I don't want to be unattractive. I compare myself to others around me. Do you have any advice? Yes, I do. First things first, let's look at the fact that you are completely validated in the fact that you have these feelings and these emotions. We live in a 7 billion plus people world, connected continuously through social media. And so we have far more exposure than any populations of people who've come before us. So we at this day and age are dealing with a lot of difficulty in the comparison factor. But here's the thing, just because you have social media, that doesn't mean that you're not going to compare yourself to people that you're with in person. And that reality distortion of what's real, what's not real. Is that my body I'm seeing in these photos, or is that not my body? So this is very, very actually common. And body dysmorphia, unfortunately, people use this term in the incorrect way. True body dysmorphia in a clinical diagnostic setting. Remember, I'm not a psychologist. I just love to research and observe all of this as my passion project of my life. And so body dysmorphia is actually that fixation on physical features. It's not so much the description of, oh, I don't see what I think I see in the mirror. That's not actually body dysmorphia. That's just a distorted perception of reality. Okay, so let's just get that straight. You don't have body dysmorphia, but you do have a distorted perception of reality. And so let's talk through a few things here, because there is no one answer here. But my goal here today is to open up your mind to a few different psychological aspects that perhaps could be going on, as well as give you some really key tools that will help you as you're seeking to not be taken down by this. Because if you're feeling always inadequate, if you're feeling insecure, if you're feeling like never pretty enough, never smart enough, never anything enough, then how does that impact your confidence? It impacts it hugely. So you're not going to go perform well. You're not going to go out in the world and be a bad A in your career or in anything you do, because you're held back by these feelings of inadequacy. So we got to get through that, because you, my friend, you deserve to empower yourself and go get stuff done. Every single one of you watching this, you do. Okay? So yes, you want to be attractive to the people you wish to attract. Okay? Yeah. So it's frustrating to deal with these thoughts and feelings that come after seeing a photo of yourself. I absolutely know that. In fact, when I had this text message come in, I had a very, very real memory come back. And that memory was when I was 18 years old. Now, many of you who have followed me for a while and heard my story, you'll know that my hyper-awareness of my body and my obsessiveness started at the age of 9 years old, but it didn't start in full blown. I mean, it was a gradual increasing process. There is a very stark memory that happened at 18 that went from hey, this is obsessive to this is a problem. Here it is. So it was my first summer in college. I remember I had got those braided extensions because I was a lifeguard at the city pool. And by default, you may wonder why I flew my hair. It's because I have a small head. And that's just reality. Your perception of reality may be different from mine. Hello, this is our topic of the day. My perception of reality is that when I have my hair totally pulled back in comparison with my bone structure, I have a very small head. Therefore, I flew my hair to distort reality as I perceive it. Do you think I really care what other people think? No, because if I look in the mirror and I think my perception, my proportions look good, then I'm okay and confidence is there, right? Okay, but I don't want to tangent into that yet. So the fact is, I was at a parade. My oldest brother was in the military and they were doing a celebratory parade. And someone snapped a photo and I was in the photo, but I was facing that way. And I remember getting the photo. I think at that time we were still transitioning to digital because the prints came back. And I saw that photo and I saw the shape of my rear end. I saw my waist area and I had been standing with my arms folded and I was mortified. I was mortified. I was like, is that my body? Like that, I thought I was like kind of skinny. Like that's not my body. And from that moment, that put me at big time fear mode. And so I launched into, well, gosh, I better do something about this. And without the proper education and training that I put out so aggressively in the world for people who are wishing to change and improve their bodies and those aesthetics, the right way, the scientific way, not the starve yourself and over-exercise. Congrats, you're going to shut everything down your body and make a mess of yourself. No, we don't do that. Rather, I wish I would have had the way of going about doing this the right way and going about it a strategic way, but I didn't have those tools at the time, so therefore that launched into my now next level disordered eating crazy part of my life. So what I want to say is I get it. I get it when you're looking at something, you're like, that is totally not what I thought I looked like. Now it can work both ways. It's bidirectional. So you can see yourself in a photo and you can say, wow, like I'm a lot bigger than I think I am. Interesting. Okay, that's one thing. And there's going to be pros and cons to both ways. The latitude of this is very, very far reaching. So in reverse, we also have, well, you think you're like lean, you're thin, you're tighter. You know, here at Bodybase, we use different terminology. Therefore, and you look in the mirror and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm this huge blimp, right? And so bidirectionally, you can see something that's not reality as it is. Now, I do have notes because there is a lot to this. So the fact is everybody does have some level of this sensory proprioceptive disruption. That's a lot of big words. Sensory means awareness of like what we perceive. Proprioception is our ability to be aware. So if I closed my eyes and I'm moving my arms, proprioceptively, I know my arms are straight side, I know my arms are straight up, I know my arms extending forward. That's proprioception. Dancers have really good proprioception. Okay, so, because we trained it. But we do see this commonly, it's at the far end of the extreme in two populations of people, one of them being those suffering with anorexia nervosa and those suffering with, now I am just giving you the research as I found it. Bodybuilders, two extreme ends of the camp in that sensory proprioception disruption. They don't perceive things as they actually are, and so they make changes in their behavior to try to get to a point of being good enough. And it's more psychological than it is physiological. So here's where it gets interesting, and I do want to give credit because I got a lot of these ideas from a theoretical talk that was given. It was a TED Talk by a student at the University of Oxford. And she, in her talk, I think she did a great job. And now, having watched it 3 times, I understand why it appeared a little disjointed and at times, and because there's not enough research out on this. There's not. And so she put out some hypotheses into the world, which I hope for a conversation with her soon. So what she talked about, and if you want to look her up, her name's Meredith Leston, Oxford TED Talk. Go watch it. So I'm going to seek to take some of her hypotheses and add in my perception and help you think about this in reality, and then we'll get into the tools of what you can begin doing today. So the fact is, belief. So your belief of who you are, how you see your body impacts your perception. So your perception, you look in the mirror and you see what you believe. This is very, very scientifically proven. We know that. We know the power of thoughts. So attentional system, it directs you to a certain interpretation. That's basically the way those neurons are firing in the beliefs, okay? So we have that, right? You look in the mirror, you see something, it is based on what you believe. There's previews right now when I'm recording this coming out for a new movie. I wish I could remember the name. If anyone knows it, please post it. But I'm super excited for it because the fact is she gets, the girl, she's a little bit more on the fluffy side, we would say, here at Body Buddies. And again, fluffy is relative, right? Like that's my perception. So she gets conked on the head, and all of a sudden she wakes up, she's like, oh my gosh, I actually love my life, I love me, I'm sexy, like, and it's all the shift in the belief. Nothing changed physiologically. But the fact is, like, this is a reality, and it's being proven in the neuroplasticity of our brain. Our brain is plastic. We can absolutely rechannel the neurons that fire and create new brain waves, new patterns off which our beliefs are formed. Therefore, our actions change. It's fascinating. So anyhow, Meredith talks about how perception is data-driven, and it's the most energy-intensive part of your brain. Mental imagery then piggybacks on the similar brain structure. Things can impact our perception. For instance, if we are not feeding our brain the right types of food, giving it the nutrition, so malnutrition, too little sleep, too much stress on the body, these can cause ambiguity in perception. So we may not see things as they really are. Therefore, if our perception is one that is less than favorable, perhaps something is getting in the way of things as they really are. It's not that our perception is something we can actually trust yet. Perhaps there's just a disconnect in the way those neurons are firing. So in the end, what I'm trying to say is you're not broken. You're not, like, you don't have this whole mental condition, and you don't need to, like, think that you have all this anxiety and this depression and everything going on, that there's simply a disconnect here. And so as we get clear on what we can be doing to help these neurons firing properly, we can actually get to amazing solutions and feel better and look in the mirror and, yes, truly believe, hey, I'm hot stuff, okay? And every single person deserves to feel that, but that's not just it. And you guys know here at Body Buddies, I don't just tell you, just love yourself. We're gonna see what we can do physiologically to help your body of its own accord be its best self and healthiest self, while we're working on these internal things too. So going back to the psychological aspect of this, you know the old adage of you are what you think about all day. I mean, it's very true. In fact, I'm in the middle of reading James Allen's book right now called As a Man Thinketh. I was texting a friend this morning and said, I can't even read more than one page in a day. It's that powerful. So everything you look for and all you perceive has a way of proving whatever you believe. It's true. So, like we said before, this can work bidirectionally. What we're trying to do is help your brain catch up to seeing things as they really are and take out the bias of comparison. So a problem, and I have worked with many clients who point out, I'm not like most people where they look in the mirror and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so big. They're like, mine is the opposite. So we actually, I could tell you right now, and you know what I do, everything is obviously anonymous unless people want me to share their name. So in this case, I'm keeping things anonymous, but there certainly are many people who present with this opposite reality, meaning they are overweight. They are not healthy. Even if all their lab markers, everything else is going on, they are carrying more body weight than they should be, okay? And yet they are very healthy mentally in terms of they look in the mirror and they are like, oh my gosh, like I am okay, like I'm hot, like I'm good. And I keep using the word hot, and forgive me for doing that. I don't mean, I mean, I'm acceptable to myself as my bias, my perception is limiting me to. So therefore, I'm okay to eat this other stuff because I'm okay and I perceive myself as okay. So there's a disconnect there, is that right? Which health is health, regardless of how we interpret it. If we're overweight, we're overweight. If we have high cholesterol, we have high cholesterol. If we have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, guess what? That's a condition in your body that isn't, you can't like look in the mirror and say, I love myself out of that. That's a physiological thing that has to change, okay? So catch my drift there. Now, with every ounce of compassion, I want to tell you that your brain absolutely can change. And I'm just trying to help you wrap your mind around the fact that this is a very deep, psychologically connected picture. So it's not just like, oh, you know, don't compare yourself, honey. Like, stop that. No, this is real, okay? So let me get back to my notes so that I can keep myself focused. This is powerful. Phantom fat. Have you ever heard of someone who has their arm cut off and then they have like maybe, whether they choose to get, what's that called? Whatever, the replacement arm, prosthetics. Or whether they don't, but they have phantom pains because of those nerve endings, right? And so it's almost as if that's still there. So phantom fat is something that is known in the literature as being real for people who lose weight. People who lose weight and their brain does not have time to catch up with the quick acceleration into the changed body. This is one reason I'm not a promoter of crash diets and the quick fat loss. I'm not, because of the psychological impact. Your brain does not have time to catch up. And so therefore, what do you believe? Your belief is still, oh, I am a 400-pound person or a 300-pound, whatever. You fill in the blank there. So you have to give yourself time for the brain and the perception to meet the reality of body composition changes. Now, this is where my hypothesis comes in, is that phantom fat works in reverse. Phantom lean, and that's exactly the story I told you at the beginning of this, happened to me. At the age of 18, my hormones were starting to change. I was no longer dancing heavily with the drill team. I was now in college, and things in my life had shifted. I wasn't burning the same amounts of fuel. I was faster, like more on the go, and so things had shifted in my body. And guess what? I was 5 to 10 pounds heavier than I had been 6 months previous to that. So the reality is my body composition had changed, but had my brain perceived that? No. Therefore, I was still perceiving my leanness as I knew it. So when I saw a photo that showed me that perception was incorrect, I got scared. And that's probably what this person who wrote in to me asking for this advice experienced. Many of us might experience this. Therefore, there's a few really great tools to use, and I want to share them with you right now because we're all about solutions here. We can talk theories till the cows come home. Here's what we need to do. The number one psychological tool, all of my Body Buddies, anyone who's done my challenge, my coaching, my Body Buddies World, any program here at Body Buddies World will know the power of reframing negative labels. Now, I'm not going to take the time to teach you this entire thing, but please know it is in my Power Your Life Today, which is a separate brand from Body Buddies. It's just the mental discipline brand I've created to support all that we do in our nutrition and fitness here at Body Buddies. So go find it on YouTube. It's a podcast on Stitcher Radio or on iTunes. So look for the episode that says Reframing Negative Labels. So what it essentially is when you look in the mirror or when you're walking down the street or when you walk in that room and that drop-dead gorgeous girl is sitting there and you're like, I feel awful right now. Because that's happened to all of us. And guys, yes, you can absolutely, this applies to you too. And the fact is we're not going to leave you out of it. The fact is most of my followers are females. That's why I'm talking to them. But I will say this is the exact same thing that happens to men. So don't exclude yourself or think, especially if a man is watching this and has experienced these things, don't think you're weak. Like this is called a human race experience and phenomenon, okay? So there's nothing like not manly about it at all. Now that we've had that combo. What you do when you're saying like, oh, I'm not good enough. The typical that I hear from people is I'm so fat, I'm so ugly, I am so, disgusting, no one's ever gonna like me. Like all of these statements that are so declarative that science shows these actually reprogram your brain to create new neural pathways down which those neurons fire. And guess what? That becomes your mechanism for everything in your life, is that pessimism, that negativity. And that's a problem, because if we experience events that come back and all we know how to do is handle it with negativity and labeling and shaming ourselves, well, that makes for a happy life, doesn't it? No. So we want to work on those pathways, and we can start to create new pathways and stop feeding the old pathways. Think of it like a trough in a garden that is watering. Like if I put the hose in the trough to go and send the water to the zucchini and the cucumber and the summer squash, and suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sick of feeding those vegetables and I want them to die. Well, I don't know why I'd do that, but let's just say, then I would build a new trough to go and send the water to the berries, to the apple tree, to the fruit trees. And I would dig a new trough, and then I'd switch the hose, and I'd stop putting the hose in the old trough, and I'd put the hose in the new trough, and the water could then go feed those, and slowly over time those would grow, and slowly over time those would die. Those of you who read James Allen's book, you will see the similarities to that metaphor. You will see them. Go reread it. I think it's page 5 or 6 or 7 somewhere. Just read the whole book. It's like a teeny little pamphlet. Good read. So basically, we're going to reframe those negative labels. No longer do you look in the mirror or think to yourself in a situation, I'm so fat. Now we validate the feeling, I feel fat, but I am, and this is the part where you actually do have to be taking action and showing your brain that you in fact are not fat because of these variables that you are applying. So for instance, something many of our body buddies do that I'm working with is I feel fat, but I am focusing on eating my small strategic meals every single day that are balanced, that are nutrient dense, and I am providing the fuel to my body. I mean, we fill in the blank with however much they want. Like, I could go on and talk about that forever. But basically the whole essence is, instead of labeling yourself with an I am statement, you're going to change it to I feel, and then you're going to prove it's wrong by what you're doing. The next tip I have for how you can seek to change those neural pathways to get your perception back on board is we have to come up to this place mentally where we are determining to work twice as hard on our brain as we do our body. Now, this is hard in a very, what is perceived by many people, superficial world, where how often are you around people and they're complimenting each other on their physical attributes? Your hair, girl, your hair looks so good today. And I'm guilty of it too. Oh, your outfit's on point. Your makeup, looking good today. How often are we instead looking for other features to compliment? Because we see in others what we see in ourselves. So therefore, observe yourself. If you're constantly complimenting other people on the way they look, on the way their body is, it's not a reflection of them, it's a reflection of what you feel. That's your paradigm revealing itself in full force. So think about that. If you shift to looking at the things you can compliment in other people, then perhaps things will begin to shift in yourself. So here's an example. I am working on, and I'm in the trenches with you guys. I'm human. Even though I talk about this, like I work on it. So when I am with somebody, I'll try and talk more about how they responded to an event, or how they talked to that person, or how, I mean, if somebody, let's say somebody taught a lesson, and I'm like, instead of being like, oh my gosh, your scarf was so cute today, I want to be more like, I so appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into your presentation of that. So I'm complimenting the person, the brain, the spirit, not the body. And it shifts our reality. And that can be bi-directional as well, that then this makes this person more aware of it too, and all of a sudden we start living in a different world. So that's something to start working on too. The next is mental discipline tool acquisition. I mentioned my Power Your Life Today podcast and YouTube channel is there for a reason. So as you go in, the first 34 sessions are all 6 to 8 minutes each. I kept them short. It's just teaching you a tool, go apply it. Teach you a tool, go apply it. And as you acquire these tools, you now have a foundation off which to manage your mind rather than be the victim of events and situations that go on all around you. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And that's free, totally free. I do that like total nonprofit. So don't avoid situations like cameras, posting photos, or buying clothes. This will continue to distort the connection between your perception and your mental imagery. So that's my hypothesis, and something I challenge my clients to do is get in front of the camera. You need to see things as they really are, and not in an effort to judge or shame yourself, to clarify that connection between proprioception and perception. And so that is going to be something that you need to do. So here's the fact, is perhaps you have shifted a little bit in your body composition. Maybe you have. So let's get real. What are you doing about it? Do you need to pull back on your refined carbohydrates? Do you need to pull back on your sugar? Do you need to ditch the afternoon soda? Do you need to start learning some of our Power Foods lifestyle techniques that aren't just to manipulate body composition? They're for longevity. They're for brain health. They're for every condition or symptom out there you bring to me. I will Power Foods lifestyle our way through it. Because this is the reality, this is the foundation upon which all health crisis lands, finds a home and healing. And so it's really beneficial to everybody listening to this to start really making it an intentional journey to get going with Power Foods lifestyle. Another thought is control your intentional programming on social media, TV, movies, magazines, etc. Of course, you can't necessarily control who else walks in the room, but you can control what you intentionally program yourself with. The studies are finding, in fact, where did this article go? Gosh, there was an interview with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates talking about how more than 3 hours spent on social media is increasing the rates of depression and suicide and things like that. And so here's the fact is, it's not just impacting our teenagers, It's impacting our adults. And I'll say, because of the observation I have, where I would say a great majority, majority is that's a tough word. I'd say a good population of people that I see inside the homes of are going to be stay-at-home moms, and I can see the absolute correlation between social media use, frequency, etc., and anxiety, depression, etc. And that's just me, no bias. I'm just sharing with you my observations and my perspective, having worked with thousands and thousands of people. I'm an observer. That's one of the things I do. So really control your intentional programming. Unfollow. I recognized a woman I was following last night. I was like, you know, I'm not feeling great about myself when I look at her stuff. It's not building me. It's not inspiring me. It's not teaching me anything. It's literally just showing me what I'm not. Therefore, unfollowed. Case closed. I don't have to say that anymore. So, you know, for those of us who are influencers, that's a direct challenge that if you are not influencing in a positive way, teaching or intentionally trying to build people through the posts that you make, then I would really put that in the classification of narcissism. And I'm not a psychologist, but that's just calling it how I see it. Unless you think I'm not aware of myself, I have these conversations with my therapist to ensure that I keep my level of narcissism down. We all have it. The key is to keep it in check, right? And this is psychology 101 in the world we live in. If we're not aware of these things, we're just going to be taken by the horns, and we're just going to be dragged around through the dirt and up and down, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, hey, doctor, I have anxiety and depression. Because there's a lot of things going on that I can't control, and I don't have a base off which to manage my mind. Okay, and I hope I'm not coming across too abrasively. Obviously, this is something that I feel strongly about, because this is a constant thing that pops up so much that we would call it an epidemic. Absolutely. So therefore, there are solutions, there are tools. I've been through it. I continue to work through it. I'm a completely different person than I was when I looked at that photo of myself and was completely terrified. But the fact is, you can start to shift things on a psychological level and a reality level. And see things as they really are. A distorted perception doesn't serve us, whether it's for feeling better or whether it's feeling worse. How about we argue both sides of the extremes are no good. Let's bring it so we perceive things as they really are, and let's seek to be our best selves. Find the good in other people. Let's stop complimenting people on their physical attributes only. I'm not saying you can't tell someone if they look really great. However, how much are we looking to validate those things from inside, remembering we're projecting onto another person what we view as reality? Deep stuff. Wish we could talk more, but I hope that helps answer your question and give you some interesting things to think about. Have discussion with your friends, your family, social media, etc. So go power your life today, and we only can do that when you power your body first. The end. Your microbes in your gut, connect to your brain. Watch for the Body Buddies Brain Challenge, 30-day challenge coming out in just a few weeks. You will be seeing a lot about it. Power your body 1 meal, 1 workout, 1 day at a time.